Scatterplots in Power BI can do a lot of things. This one here lets you select what you want dynamically as the y-axis, and then lets you select how you want the size to appear, and it can also let you select the colors to cluster the different points based on your selection. We're going to be going through how to make this step by step today, so follow along and let's check this out. So this is actually part of Enterprise DNA's visualization workout from Gustaw Dudek. I'm going to link this website in the description. And if you go here, you'll be able to download the Excel file that I'm using for this workout, as well as instructions and a community of other people who are also developing this report. Now, all of the instructions that I'm going to follow are in the actual report itself, which is also in the website. You can, it's like see there's a link that will take you to this report. And we're just going to simply get started. Okay, so I've already downloaded the data and I have loaded it into my new Power BI desktop instance here. And I'm going to show you the steps that I have taken to make this scatter plot. This might be a little bit of a long video, but bear with me. I'm going to take you through every single step of the process. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to create a new table. And we're going to call this measures, and it is simply going to be a table where I'm going to keep all of my measures. And we're going to go back here and maybe make this a little bit larger so that you can see exactly what I'm trying to do. So the first thing that I'm going to try to do is make the metrics, the gross profit and gross margin percentage, which will be calculated based on the data set. The data set itself is actually very simple. It has some information about the date, what the client, it's like number ID is, the client's name, the business ID, the business name, the units sold, revenues, and the cost. And revenues and cost are in thousands of USD. Pretty simple data sets, and in order for us to actually do what we need to, we're going to first calculate the sum of revenue. Now, you can actually, of course, sum of revenue is something that you can just drag a column from the fact table that has been provided, and that will give you the sum of revenues. This is what's called an implicit measure, but because I already know that the sum of revenue is going to be used in multiple measures, I'm simply going to make it into an actual measure that I write out. This is called an explicit measure, and it's pretty important to actually do. So as you can see, the sum of revenue that I've, it's like put in here is simply the sum of this column. Likewise, I'm going to create another measure called the sum of the costs, which will of course just be the sum of the cost. This is important because since we're trying to create the gross profit and the gross margin, we need these values because the gross profit is of course the revenue subtracted by the sales. And if we want to calculate the gross margin, the gross margin is a percentage of the gross profit divided by the sum of the revenue. And so simply need to to select this and format it into a percentage. So once that's done, we can actually start creating the scatter plot already. So we have a visual with revenue inside, and I am going to throw in the gross margin percentage, and selecting the build a visual on objects, it's like formatting. I'm going to select the visual types, open up the drop down and select scatter chart. Now I've selected a scatter chart, but as you can see, it doesn't really look like the scatter chart that we have here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at this, and I can see that there is another value that needs to be input into the scatter chart in order for it to work. So we're going to go back to the Power BI, and we're going to put in the client name into this visual. So I'm going to select build a visual again. I'm going to add values, and we're going to throw in the client's name. And we can see that this visual itself, this scatter plot here, is starting to look a little bit more like the scatter plot here. So if we have them side by side, you can actually see that, yes, it is starting to look a little bit more similar. But in that case, let's move on to, take the next part, lines. Applied 0 lines for both x-axis and y-axis, constant lines. So let's get on with that part. Here, in order to do this, we're going to need to click the visual elements, and we're going to need to select more options. In the more options, you can click on reference line and add a line. You can choose the type of line as well. It's going to be the x-axis and the y-axis constant lines, and we're going to set them as 0. In in order to make them look more like this specific, it's like item, I'm gonna do it in the same style as well. So you can see that this is a kind of, it's like solid gray, slightly transparent. So we'll just select a gray, maybe a slightly darker gray. We're gonna select the style to solid. It's in front, that's fine. I'm happy with what that looks like. And then we're going to add another line, a y-axis constant line, and it's going to be the same. So instead of dashed, put it as solid. And as you can see, that's the second part right here. It's got those nice solid lines, which are slightly transparent. And that takes care of the second step. Now, for the third step, on the XY axis, revenues applied as X-axis and 2 other metrics applied as Y-axis scale using field parameters. So he mentions that you can use, it's like year-over-year change in net sales or any other metrics. So I'm going to do exactly what he's done here as well. So you can actually see, make this a little bigger again. You can see that this is the field parameter. He has gross margin and net sales, and depending on the selection, the y-axis changes. So we're going to do that as well. The first thing to do is, because we're going to do year-over-year percentage increase, we need, it's like some form of a, honestly, you don't necessarily need a date table, but I'm going to add one anyway because it's pretty easy to do. I'm going to select external tools, and this works really well if you have, it's like the external tool already installed, but I like using Bravo for, it's like tasks like this. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Bravo and I'm going to click on Manage Dates. And in the Manage Dates, what it's going to do is it's going to create a date table for me directly to use. I'm going to make sure that I turn off the time intelligence functions because I really don't need those. And I'm not going to select holidays either, but if I have dates, it's essentially going to create a date table for me without me having to do anything at all. So there it is, it's done. And you can see that now in my data model, a date table has appeared. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that date table and I'm going to connect it to the fact table using the date columns, make a relationship, and now I have a fully functioning date table. Friends, if you haven't tried Bravo yet, really you got to get on it. It's the fastest way to make a dates table for your data model. So now that I actually have a dates table, and it's like, as you can see, it's basically got everything that I need from the actual date to it's like year, quarter, month, etc. With this date, I'm actually going to, it's like generate the net sales past year. And in order to do that, I'm going to go back to the measures table and I'm going to create a new measure. Okay, so I need this to go away. This is one of the things that is unfortunately not the best. The on object remains, even if you're going through a different DAX, the DAX it's like code should really be over it in my opinion. So net sales past year, basically what I've tried using the offset function where I'm going to try to calculate what for the revenue in the last year, what is the so calculate the sum of the it's like revenue and offset it by 365, so a year, it's like 365 days based on, it's like the date table ordering by the actual date. So this is one of the ways that you're able to calculate, it's like the past year. I know it's probably not the most optimal one. And of course you can use, period last year instead. But I wanted to give this a go. So once I have the net sales past year, I can create a new measure that is going to be the net sales delta percentage. So this will be the year-over-year percentage increase. So you're basically taking the sum of the current year revenue subtracted by the revenue in the last year and dividing that by the last year. And that way you will have a percent increase. If you want to know how to make this, like delta sign, essentially it's like on Windows computers, what you need to do is you need to hold the Windows button and the semicolon, so this button right here. And if you do that, then you get, it's like this window that pops up. And there's a button here that says symbols. So if you click on symbols, it should be something that you can, it's like select. If you just scroll down, I'm sure you'll be able to find it. I've used it very recently, so you can actually see that it's here in recent. But I think in math symbols, yeah, because delta is, yeah, so you have a it's like delta symbol here that you can it's like use, and that's basically how you get it out very quickly. So this is basically it's like a percent, so I need to format it into a percentage, and then we're almost ready to go. So the expected behavior is that I will have a slicer that will be able to change the y-axis based on my selection. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to modeling, new parameter, fields, and I'm going to name this parameter y-axis. And I'm going to select the net sales delta per past year percentage and the gross margin. And once I create this, also make sure you have the add slicer selected, and then it's going to generate the slicer itself, and I'm going to need to change this scatter plot, the y-axis from gross margin to the y-axis parameter that was created. And now I have this y-axis parameter, and it's going to allow me to switch between the gross margin and net sales. You'll actually, it's like very clearly see that this doesn't look the same as, it's like this when net sales is selected, but that's because the date is currently being used as a filter. So let's add those right now. The date filter should be year and month. So right now, 2022 has been selected. So you can see that now corresponds to the actual visual itself. If we want to make this look more like what it's like Gustav has actually created, I'm going to make sure that I go to more options, size and style. No, it's a slicer settings, and I'm going to have it be a drop down and select 2022. So you can see that's exactly how it looks. And for the, let me see, the y-axis itself, now it should function almost exactly the same, but I also need to make sure that this is a specific item that has a single select, because if neither item is actually selected, you end up with it's like nothing selected, and if nothing is selected, it actually can sometimes cause issues. Make sure you have a single select going, and you should not have any issues. Okay, so that's step 3. For step 4, we're going to have average and median lines. Now we're going to apply either average or median lines for any selected metric to be displayed on x-axis and y-axis with the line name and value. So how you do that is you're going to select the item and go to the format pane once again, and we're going to add 2 more reference lines. So it's going to be add line, and this line we're going to call, it's like maybe, we won't name it just yet, but we're going to make it be an average line of the y-axis, and you can see now a lovely y, it's like axis line has been created. I'm going to leave the color as is. I don't think it's super important right now, but the data label you can actually select, and you can see that a tiny blue data label has appeared. This is a little hard to see, so you can actually change the position above or under as it's like you'd like, and you can select the data value or the name or both. So now you have something that's a y-axis line. That's why it's important to name these, and it's like it's pretty cool to to be able to do this. Okay, so I think I've made a mistake here. I think I've been working on something else. Okay, so we have the average line, the y-axis line, and these two are the it's like constant lines. What I want to do is I want to work on the average line, not that one. So now I've selected the average line again, and now I've created the data label. Now we're seeing the correct data label. And I'm going to call it, it's like give it average line, it's like, and it's showing a specific value. And you can select left or right. I think right fits better because you'll actually be able to see it this time. And you can choose to have it either above or under. I'm going to have it above for now. And this is pretty good. Average line, and we'll go back and see how it looked like here. Average net sales with no decimal points. And there we go. We're going to need to create another average net, it's like average line for the y-axis as well. And basically what we're doing is we're going to select average line, and we are going to, okay, so I did select the average line, but you can see that the bottom one was selected. I think this is just a Power BI bug. And I'm going to select the series as the net sales past year, and I'm going to make sure that the line is the same color as it should be, and the data label's on, and it's going to be the exact same. It's going to show both, and I'm going to put this on the right so that you can very clearly see it, and it's going to say the average net sales delta past year percent. Okay, fantastic. So I'm happy with that. It's a little bit wordy, but it's like it shows exactly what I'd like it to show. But this is one thing that you need to watch out for. Right now, we have the y-axis net sales delta past year selected. So I've created, it's like something for this. But what happens if I press the gross margin and change the dynamic y-axis? It's actually going to disappear. So I need to actually go back and create another reference line. So it's going to be add another line, and I'm going to make this line another average line, select it again, and select the gross margin. So it's just something that you need to know. Does happen. But it's pretty, it's like as long as you know, it's like, and you test it out, you'll never really have any issues in the first place. And there we go. Now we have, it's like some lovely reference lines that work for whatever the dynamic selection you have. Okay, so that covers point 4. We're going to go ahead and do point 5, item marker colors. Now, this is a little bit of a tricky one. Item marker colors is a kind of conditional formatting, either using a gradient rules or field value preferably, but not obligatory. Conditional formatting can be based on any conditions rules that are analytically valuable from the report creator's perspective. Now, I am going to, it's like hold off with this because there's something here, it's like point 10, which extends this a little bit more. So number 5, we're going to wait just a little bit. So number 6, apply dynamic title either as a native scatter chart title or as a text box with adequate names of currently displayed metrics. So this right here is what you see at the very top, depending on what is being selected, either gross margin percent or the net sales past year. It's like depending on the selection, it actually changes the, it's like title, and also depending on the year, it's like the date selected, it changes, it's like what is being shown. Right now, you can also even show, it's like Hang on, let me see. Is there any other indications? No, it's only it's like the y-axis and the size that alters. It's like the text itself. But you can see it looks really nice and works really well. And I'm going to show you how you can do this with a text box. So first of all, I'm going to remove the title on this lovely scatter plot we have going on, and I'm going to add a text box right here. The reason we actually want to use a text box is simply because I don't think it's actually possible to get this kind of bold parts in the it's like text from the title itself. So we're simply going to try to get that going. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I make the values first. If you are trying to do something dynamic, make sure you always put the values first in the order that you want them. Right now, what I want is essentially two different values, maybe three different values. What I'm going to do is the y-axis selection. So y-axis name, I'm going to save this as y-axis. Then I'm going to create another value. It's going to be the date and the minimum date. And we're going to put this as in this format. And then I'm going to create one more for the maximum date. In this format. So now you can see that there are three different values that I can use. Let's make this a little bigger for now. And one of the things that is a little bit annoying is that it's really difficult to work with these. If you select the wrong thing, for example, everything can be removed, for example. But let's just go back. Let's see how that was selected. Okay, so this item here is bolded. And then we have net revenue. I believe that's what it says. Net sales in KUSD. And now we almost have it. Yeah. So one of the things that is slightly annoying is that it is very difficult to get these selections going. Simply trying to put in this item here, and it's pretty hard. By contractor. Okay, so I'm also going to make all of this a little bit bigger. And we are also going to make sure that we format this properly. So size and style, we'll remove the background and make sure there's no visual border. And now when I select this, you can see that it all automatically updates based on what is being selected, gross margin percentage. And if I select a different year of the month, January, it's like is unselected, or if I just select 2011, 2021, for example, the date ranges change. So this is a way to use, it's like the values for the text to create a dynamic, how would you say, a dynamic scatter, it's like title for your scat plot. Let's move this back just a tiny bit. Okay, so now it's like perfectly aligned. That's great. That's exactly what I want to see. Let's go back to here. I think I want to change this to, instead of sum of revenues, I'll just call this revenues. Fantastic. So now it's not exactly like this, but it's pretty close. I'm happy with, it's like what it looks like right now. So now we've completed the title. We're gonna create the legend, and of course the axis titles number 8 already changes based on the, it's like metric selection, so that's not a big deal. Number 7, the legend here is applied, is, it's like as native built-in legend for the gradient, or as individual custom creation legend should indicate, describe the color meaning. Now, what Gustav has done here is based on what you select in the cluster segment, it's like he's put in a couple of things all together. So the colors change based on your selection, but also the legend here changes based on your selection. And you can see that this is also in relation to number 10, the cluster segmentation for the conditional formatting, depending on, it's like what is being selected. So I'm going to do all of this in one go and show you how to do all of this stuff. You can even see that there's a legend depending on the conditional formatting complexity being done, and I'm gonna show you all of this right now. There is also one other thing here at the very end, number 12, labels. Item names, where there's a switch button where you select a switch button in order to show labels or hide labels. I think this is the one that I'm not going to show you because that's simply a bookmark to, it's like show either one that does have, it's like the contractor, it's like name selected or not. But I think that I'm going to show you this large part of how to do the conditional formatting in this way. And of course, before that, we're gonna do size. Size is, it's like a dynamic selection as well, where you can select either the size as the services sold or as none. This is a really cool thing that he's doing here, and I'm going to show you how that's being done. Essentially, if I take, it's like the size here, and I add from the fact table, I believe it's the unit sold, you can actually see this is basically what is being shown. This is, it's like the actual size and everything matches, it's like it's almost identical and you can see that. But that being the case, how do we make this into, it's like something that you can select? Well, I think the easiest way to do this is to make sure that you are creating a very, very simple it's like it's honestly very simple how to do it. This isn't something that it's like I would normally do, but in measures we're going to create a measure called no size is equal to -1, and from no size and the sum of costs, we're also going to need, of course, need to create another measure for the sum of the units, and we're going to create a field parameter. Yes, another field parameter. So we're going to call this one size selection. And we're going to throw in the no size and the sum of units. Now you can actually see that here it's being called none and services sold. And if you want to have the exact labels, you can actually change them here. And if I create this, basically I'm going to just need to do what I did for the y-axis as well. Make sure I remove the size and make it into the size selection item. And once the size selection is done, if I select none, it will just show a, it's like the regular size. But if I select services sold, it's going to show the big size. Of course, let's go and make sure to format this correctly. Because I want to format this in the same way as this slicer, I could just select this slicer, click on Format Painter, and select this, and it should be, it's like, it should show exactly what I wanted to show in the correct way. So that's what I'm going to do. All right, let's like get this out there. It's not perfectly aligned. Oh, whatever, it doesn't matter. Okay, so Now that I have this done, I'm going to finally show you how to do this fantastic, really fantastic, it's like method of selecting multiple different colors based on, it's like the selection, and also have uh, a legend, a color legend based on what you've selected. I think this is a really, it's like a great technique that has been shown here, and I'm going to show you how to do it. The actual secret lies in, honestly, it's a table. And this here is the table itself. This table is something that I, it's like scraped from this, it's like Power BI report by taking each of the different clusters, the different selections that you can have in the, it's like slicer here to select the different colors. And depending on the selection, taking out the different conditions that you see here. So there's 5 different clusters: none, GM percentage levels, GM percentage above, below 0, and change percent, past year percentage, so year over year percentage change above, below 0, and the business line itself. So for each of these items, I mapped out all of the different parts that would be the segments of the cluster, and I gave the segment, it's like an index, and the clusters an index. I also gave each condition its color. And I actually scraped this from, it's like the Power BI report as well. I use this extension on Chrome called Color Pick Eyedropper. And if you open that up and you hover over a specific, it's like a value in Google Chrome, you can see what the hex code is. And it's actually really important to have the hex code here, it's like in the table, if you want to make this, it's like matrix happen in this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to copy this table that, it's like, and I created this before, and I am going to go to enter data in the Power BI. And I'm simply going to hit Control V. And here I'm going to call the table cluster/segment. And I'm going to hit load. And this is simply going to load these, it's like, it's like this tiny table into, it's like my system. And now comes the, it's like more difficult part. I've already created this measure, and, it's like because I already did this workshop slightly before. And this is what the measure that I'm using looks like. I've called it Scatterplot colors. And it has it first finds a variable, which is going to be the selection index. This is going to represent what segment is being used, and from the it's like segment index, it's going to calculate the color based on, it's like this segmented index. So depending on what's, it's like being selected here, it's going to tell me which color is being used. The way that it does that is that for each of these, it's like individual items. Okay, so I don't need to actually do this. I think I already have this up here. So the way that I'm doing this is that for each of these individual clusters that are selected, the condition that is going to, it's like hold true, whether or not the, it's like gross margin percentage is, it's like above 45%, or if it's above 25 to 45%, I am basically giving that information to Power BI in this DAX measure. So if none is selected, there's no other condition, so the index is just 1. But if the GM percentage level is selected, I need to know if the gross margin percentage is above 45%, then it will be condition 2. If it's above 25% and not above 45%, it'll be condition 3. And this is being done with the switch function. Goes through each of the different clusters, finds, it's like the condition for the different segments. It's going to be, if it's above or below 0%, 0, then it's going to find simply whether or not it's above or below 0. Anyway, that's the logic behind the DAX function. So once I have that, I can go into the scatter plot again, go back into the format pane. And if I select markers, there will be a color aspect here under markers that I can select the function for conditional formatting. I select the format style as the field value, and I simply take this measure, scatter plot colors. And once I've done that, all I need to do is I need to take this table that I entered and I need to throw it into a slicer. I'm going to have the slicer be single selection. And if it is single selection, you can see that it works. Depending on what cluster is being selected, it's going to tell the scatter plot based on this DAX formula what color I want the markers to be. So this works. Let's change one thing though, which is that the cluster should be ordered by the cluster index. And if I do this, then we have the exact same order that you see here. That's basically the reason that you have the index value in, it's like this in this table. Because if you didn't have the index value, it wouldn't order, it's like very nicely. Okay, so now let's do the final part, which is we're going to make this dynamic legend based on what is being selected. This is essentially just going to be a very simple table. I'm going to throw in a segment. Oh no, I'm going to throw the segment into, it's like a table here. And I'm also going to throw in the segment index. So now we have these two different items and I'm going to change it back into a table. And I'm going to make sure that the segment index, the title, I'm just going to name 1. The reason for that is that I just want this to be a tiny, tiny box that I can enter in. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the format. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change the style preset into minimal. I am going to make the grid into a white color that I'm going to increase to maybe is width 10. I'm going to go ahead and remove the totals. And I'm going to make sure that the column headers is white. There's no real way to remove the column headers now. Before, in previous versions, you used to be able to just make an item, click a column name, hit space, and enter, and it would remove, it would make the column a space bar. But it's not possible right now, which is, it is what it is. I'm going to make the border also white. And now we have this here. Now we're going to add the colors to this, it's like index right here. And we are going to make sure that the specific column, no, the cell elements is going to be selecting the series 1. And I'm going to set the background color and I'm going to hit FX and I'm going to set the field value to simply be the color column from this table. And if I do that, and I do the same for the font color, it's going to show me exactly what I want. Because it's going to reference the hex code that's being selected, and that's essentially it. Now, when I select any of the clusters, it will show me whatever I want. Let's maybe move this here. Let's move this under here. And let's also, in the view for selection, also move this table to the back so that it doesn't bother with this. Okay, so now when I select none, it shows all items. When I select any one of these items, it should show me exactly what I'd like to see. And that just about covers every single part of making this, it's like visual. Of course, there are some things that, it's like you could do, like making, it's like the colors a little bit nicer, making sure that there's a background that's, it's like presents the reports in a slightly nicer way. But I'm not going to do that for this video. I hope that, it's like you managed to learn something from the way to use, it's like field parameters and a little bit of, it's like custom formatting and a little bit of this text box value stuff in order to get a really dynamic, customizable scatter plots to use in your own reports. Thanks, and as always, have a good one. Take care.